Well, good morning on this bright sunny April day here in the UK. I'm going to pre-assemble some of the components for the Norton 61 today. I've got my primary chain case all ready to install. I've ordered some new rubber parts. This is the clutch adjustment bung that I've already put in, and then I've got these other bits here. I've got sealing washer and the cap that go onto the inspection bit here, so that's to go on. Okay, so before putting the primary chain case on, just needed to make sure that this gearbox was right. So I've checked the primary chain tension and adjusted it as per the manual, and this locking system here is now tightened up, and I've also tightened up the main bolt, this main nut here. This shaft here has a nut on the other end as well, so it's just a case of getting them balanced. You can actually get a spanner in from the other side. It is tight, but from underneath you can get a big spanner in on the on this nut on the corresponding side and give that a good tighten up. So that's that done, and so I can start looking at putting the primary chain case on and the headlight shell and doing some wiring. It's a bit tight. Right, so that's all in place and tightened up, and then the last little bit is the central ring where the footrest goes through, if you can see that, and that just goes on there, and this part here screws onto the footrest. The only thing I would say about this is that it's still bearing marks of the original paint colour, the red. The old primer case I had was a red one. I've had this plated. They tried to plate it with chrome and it just wasn't having it, so this is actually polished nickel. That's the nearest we could get. I just liked it, and so that's what I did. So I'll be installing this a bit later on. As for the headlamp shell, and there's a rubber seal on the inside of that, which I've paid about £3 for, and to be honest, I could have made it out my roofing material. I paid about £1 for that sheet of 1 metre by 1 metre, and I could have made that ring out of it. It's the same gauge rubber, but anyway, there you go. So that's ready to install. As far as the headlight shell goes, I've put the ammeter in, and on the inside of here, if you can see that, there's this bracket that goes like a U-shaped bracket that goes round and clamps the ammeter to the headlight shell. Unfortunately, on the Speedo, it doesn't have that, and I've noticed that this is turning, this one's stiff, so I have no nuts for that, no bracket for that. It never came with it when I dismantled it. It actually used this rubber grommet, which I'm not sure is part of the Norton at all. It's probably just something that somebody's put in an assembly. The reason I suspect that that is not an original part is because I ordered this rubber sealing ring here by the part number from the manual, which only mentions one rubber bit for mounting the clock, and that's just a ring. So that, I imagine, just sits in the headlight shell like that, and then you put the bracket and screws in a similar fashion to the other one. Well, I haven't got that, so I'll either have to make it. I've tried to see if I can find it online and they don't seem to have it, so I might have to make a bracket for that. This rubber on the original one actually does sit in there quite nicely on the top there, so I may in fact use that, because it did keep it in quite tight. It was quite a pig to get out originally, so I might actually use that rubber, and it just pushes onto there. I'm going to get some advice on that on the forum, see if anybody knows if that's how it should go on. But other than that, I've substituted the light switch back to an original Lucas part which has got the ignition, the lights and everything built into one switch, which I've pre-wired just for ease. These are screw-in connectors, and these colours of these wires correlate to the wiring on my wiring harness, and I'll probably just put bullet connectors on there. I mean, I don't have to because I've left the trails long enough to not have to do that, but I think it's bullet connectors if you ever need to take it off, rather than fiddling about with little wires and screwdrivers and things. For me particularly, some people think I'm a bit of a clumsy person, keep dropping things and spanners and what have you. Rather than you think I'm an idiot, which I probably am, I do suffer quite badly with arthritis, and anybody who's got arthritis in their hands knows how that is. Those things that you used to be able to do, and the dexterity of your fingers was from years gone, you can do. Now I can't do that, unfortunately. Gone are the days where I can hold a nut, a washer and a spring washer, shove it up inside somewhere and put them all in. I just can't do that anymore. I just can't feel the ends of my fingers enough. I'm not making an excuse, I'm just saying that's the reason. So if I drop stuff and things fall about, that's the reason. I'm not complaining, I just have to get on with it or find a method around that. So for me, putting these tails on and bullet connectors, it means I'm not having to try and fiddle about with little components. So that's that over with. Right, I shall crack on and check the wiring, install this part into the headlight shell so I can get on with the wiring. But before I do that, you probably remember that I've got these two spaces. Woo! See, there's a typical example of it. I've got these little spacers. They're a little bit wide for the headlight shells, so I'm gonna have to spin these in a drill with a bit of emery cloth just to take a little bit of material off so they fit nicely into the headlight shell. So while I search on the floor for the bit I just dropped, I'll let you either fast forward or wait till the next bit. So here we are with the primary chain case ready to go on. I've already installed this rubber seal. It's got a thicker edge at the back and a lip at the front here, which apparently that should come to the front, and as you squeeze it on it gets tighter and tighter by tightening the wherever I've put it. There it is. Put these on here and that tightens it on. Have I started a debate on this sealing method. These rubber seals are absolutely notorious for leaking oil, particularly around the bottom. On my bike, when I first bought this bike, my chain case was absolutely oil tight, and I ran it for about 3 or 4 months before I started doing the restoration on the bike, and this bottom edge here was absolutely full of wax, which had been poured in somewhere, presumably through the access hole here, and it was just caked with wax all along the bottom, which did the trick, but it was very unsightly, as you can see in that photograph. So I've actually bought this new primary chain case, both the inner part and the outer part, because I wanted to go to chrome, and as I said before, I couldn't get it chromed, just wouldn't take it, so it's now nickel plated. I think it looks nice, so I'm going to pop that on Pro Tem for now. As I say, the debate goes on as to how to seal this rubber ring. I've been onto several Facebook forums and asked the question, how do people seal it, and I've had probably 100 replies to that. Right, the method which should be used is it should just go on dry. That's one method. Some people tell me not to bother putting any oil in the primary chain case, use the sealed bearing for the clutch, and use an O-ring chain which doesn't need as much lubrication. That's one thing. Other people say just blob this primary chain full of grease and don't bother having any oil in it whatsoever. If you do want to seal it, people are saying grease the rubber with either red rubber grease or a thicker grease you can get, and be gentle tightening this up. Other people are saying use silicone both on the inside and the outside. The problem with that being apparently you can never get them back off again, but they do seal. So I don't know what to do just at the moment. I think my preferred route just at this stage is to probably just go with the grease sealing method for now. So I'm going to smear grease on the top and bottom edges of the rubber and on the inside of the primary chain case, because it's actually in pretty good nick, this one. There's not too many dings and bends in it, so I shall probably do that and just see if that leaks, and if it does, I mean, it's not a huge job getting it back off again, so let's go with that method. So I'm told this is guaranteed to work. You squeeze it top and bottom, push it right in onto the rubber, and that should start sealing the rubber. And as soon as you got it to the point where you can't squeeze it anymore, is to then tighten this up finger tight as much as you can, and then half a turn. So that's what I'm going to do on that. This is where the footrest fits on here, and doesn't it look pretty, as they say? In fact, this nickel, when it's polished, looks as good or better than chrome. I've also had that done on the BSA chain guard as well. They had a similar problem with chroming. Maybe it's just my chroming people, but there, look, that's pretty good. I like it. So, she'll now carry on with the headlight shell and wiring.